Hey everybody, today is August 16th, 2015. To continue on the outsider versus insider arguments. An outsider is probably going to be the only people that can make the change for these reasons. They're not conditioned to false beliefs, and they can question all that they learn before they move on to the next step. Unfortunately, that process doesn't work because a 4-year degree would be dragged out 20 years, and that's not really the best option for most colleges. Stay in school for 20 years? Okay. And then you have your degree after that? No. What happens is a lot of these students, they take all the information in school, and they take it as true, and then look through the telescope at what they already know to be there. So there's no room for questioning. The questioning should have happened in college. But what happens these days is students, they go to school, they learn everything they're told, they believe it, they go out to their jobs, they look through the telescopes, and they already know it's there. So the transcendence ability of astronomy isn't there anymore. The idea that they can look out and discover something new just doesn't exist because they're already told what is up there in their astronomy classes. And that transcendence ability is kind of lost upon them, and they always have to make it fit into the paradigm or else they don't get their grants and funds and things like that. And you notice that when you read a lot of abstract papers, how they go back to that catch. Oh, this is going to prove the CMB where it came from, or the Big Bang and all this nebula hypothesis stuff. You'll see that a lot if you read a lot of the abstracts. And I think a major thing that happens to people when they start taking astrophysical courses is that really abstract ideas are always thrown at them all the time, and they're told to take it as true, and then learn the math behind it, and then to get their A's, and then there's no room to question it. They're pumped out of the class, they go to the next class, and before you know it, their head is full of stuff that doesn't make any sense. And an outsider, I think from my own perspective, is that the work can be carried out as it is the right thing to do, and in no part should be reliant on any type of financial award for doing so, as well as the actual processes behind working on it are not reliant on any income for the beliefs. For instance, I don't have to believe in Big Bang or nebula hypothesis. I can work on my theory absent anybody's influence and absent the threat of having my income confiscated or being fired from my job. My job is completely separate from the astrophysical interpretation community, which is actually a really good place for me. So being an outsider is an excellent spot for that. And I have here, to do important work these days, especially if it conflicts with establishment, you have to be an outsider so that the ideas that you work on will not be tainted by false knowledge or pseudoscience. And yes, there's a whole hell of a lot of that in the establishment. And what happens is I've realized that as I work on the stellar evolution models, I see a lot of the stellar structure equations trying to fit relativity in there. And I'm like, relativity is pseudoscience, so what the hell are they doing? Why are they trying to place that in there? And it leads to a lot of other false conclusions based off of that have no firm grounding in reality. So to be an outsider, you can look at what you think is pseudoscience and you can just go ahead and ignore that and push it off to the side. That way it doesn't cloud your judgment. A lot of insiders have succumbed to that because they have a lot of social pressure to conform to those ideas, and they can't really see clearly what the problems are at hand, which is why they are still mysteries, even though we have incredible technology to make observations. That's why they're still mysteries, because of the way their minds are set up, and they don't know that some of it is pseudoscience and some of it is false knowledge. Only outsiders can take that and, see it for what it really is, the term outsider. See here, you get a whole lot of pressure to conform to the same ideas your peers believe in or taught. And it's worse in college, especially if you want to have a career in that kind of community. You can't you can't disagree with what your peers believe, because then you ruin your opportunities for jobs in the future, and you ruin the opportunities you'll be pointed to, like making new friends and things like that. And one of the illusions that I think an outsider has a massive advantage over insiders is that they don't suffer from the illusion of teachers and experts always being right. That is an illusion that they suffer from, or I should say delusion, is that when students, they go to school, they study what their teachers are telling them, yet they don't understand that sometimes they might be really, really wrong concerning something. Yet their authority figure kind of ruins their mind. It sets them off into the idea that, no, this teacher's right, they're the expert, they've been working on it for so many years, they couldn't possibly lead us in the wrong direction. But as we all know, that's not exactly reality. That's not the truth here. Your teachers can be very, very, very wrong concerning many subjects, and they could continue teaching them strictly because everybody believes them to be true. But we all know better. And the reason why outsiders don't succumb to that illusion is because they are their own teachers. I am my own teacher. You are your own teacher. If we see something that we don't think makes sense, we can question it. We can say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Let's get rid of that, you know. So the expertise that's on the internet, and we find it, we can sort through it and figure out what is true, what's probably nonsense. And you can see by the way they write these articles. For instance, if you go to Wikipedia and look up the iron catastrophe, you'll see like 1 or 2 references. Yet this thing is supposed to be the process which formed the core of the Earth, and it only has 2 references out of 100 years of study. Like, what the hell? And then you go to the Higgs boson page, and there's like 350 references for something that's fake. Higgs boson is fake science. So you can see that dichotomy there. Really important things are ignored that actually have value to science, and things that don't have any value to science but are used to fuel the big gravy train for people, for universities being in bed with government. They're the ones that are they're making all the money, but they're not doing actual science. So to be self-taught means that you can see things for as they are, and many times, more often than not, you can outclass the experts, because the experts, they're in their own little bubble of reality with all their peers. They don't have the capacity to see outside the box. And outsiders have no qualms about examining ideas that would be considered blatantly wrong, because they have no emotional or psychological attachment to any ideas. Now, I know for a fact a lot of astronomers, they look at the ideas they're told in school, such as the fusion model of the sun, and they work on it for so long with all their mathematical equations and all this stuff that it becomes solidified in their mind because they've been working on it. They've been frustrated and angry how much work they had to do, so they attach their mind to that idea, even though the idea is absolutely false. And with outsiders, the ideas can move and can be bent and examined at will without prejudice, or just prejudgment. To get an education means that you can't really learn anything without prejudging it automatically, and that's very detrimental to making new discoveries and making new avenues of approach. And that's what happens, and that's what education does. And I've learned this via interaction with a lot of forums, as many educated individuals prejudge because it's easier to sort stuff out. It's easier just to brush off what they consider nonsense and then only look for what they were told in school and to confirm what it is they already believe. It's that confirmation bias. And personally, I think outsiders can reason more effectively because they have no prior conditioning. And prior conditioning doesn't exist in younger people. So many more times than often, they have more refined bullshit detectors than do overeducated people. there's a sweet spot when I think it comes to education. You can't assume that everything is correct and there's nothing wrong at all. And as well, you have to have some little bit of education to be able to determine if it's nonsense or not. So there's a little, I guess you could say, Goldilocks zone between not too much education or too much education and not enough education. There's a center. But these days, what happens is that it becomes polarized. You have people who are overeducated in astronomy who can't learn anything new, and you have people that don't know anything about astronomy at all, and their opinions and ideas cannot be trusted at all. So you have this polarization happening, and then where you should be is right in the middle, where you have just enough to where you can make discoveries without being prejudgmental on these new insights and things. But you gotta have enough to where you can actually start working on stuff and solving these issues. And I think that sweet spot is only available in outsiders these days, because the insiders, they become too polarized on this side. They become too overeducated. And basically, I think that sums up the last point here. And hopefully people can really understand where I'm going with this. I think I'm going to take a little break, to be honest, because my mind is absolutely fried. I'm exhausted of this theory. And just a few, how can I say, what's that word called? I can't even think of the word right now. But today is August 16th, I already said that. If you have any questions or comments concerning this talk, please leave them below.